16, I forget when it was, and went through Texas, southern part of the United States, coast to coast. And while I was on that trip, there was a church in the U.S., and it was a big church, I think like 40,000 people. The pastor retired, and the next guy took over, and the church blew up. And I think the church almost ceased to exist. It was so bad. And I was reading about it, thinking about it, and I thought, man, I don't want that to happen here. I've given my life to this church. I don't want it to just blow up. And so I did a lot of thinking about it, praying about it, and I thought, this transition needs to take a while. And so that there's a gradual transition taking place, so it works well, it's healthy, and so we've been at it for, I think he said 10 years, or that's when he's been preaching. He's been here longer than I think 15 years. So it's just a little bit. Came back from a bicycle trip. Okay, you're the preacher now, and one time I said, okay, you're in charge of staff now, and then you're going to run the elder meeting, and it just a little bit at a time, and so each time it's a little bit of a, for me, I've been here 47 years. You talk about turf. It isn't an easy thing to give away what I've owned for years, and especially when I know it isn't going to go just the way it would if I were doing it. And so it's always a temptation when you give something away, like with Mike, and he doesn't do it quite, is to say, wait, that's not how we do this. You just say, okay, it's your baby now, and you just go with it. And I remember in fact, David was up here speaking, and he prayed one time, right after Mike started preaching, he said, Lord, I pray that you will make Mike twice the preacher that Dee is. And everybody was in the room kind of snickered. And here not too long ago, he says, Lord, I just thank you that you've made Mike twice the preacher that Dee is. And so everybody snickered at the same thing. But I thought, yeah, it took a while, but God's working, and the church has grown. It's grown more. Every time I leave on a bicycle trip, I come back, it's grown more while I've been gone than it ever grew while I was here. And so it's sort of a little bit of humbling to recognize that things are going quite well without me. And in fact, when I leave for 3 months, I come back, it's been going really well without me. And but that's what leaders are supposed to do, are to train, equip, and things go well. And as Mike quoted, real leadership, as he leaves, does it keep going? Does it keep running? And so it's a process, it's a system. And you keep working it and keep working it and keep working it and stay faithful to that training, equipping process. So a dozen blessings that come to a church as a result of leadership training program. This one that we do, the blessings, they're cool. Number one, the number of people who are involved in serving, working in the church grows. No warts, that's the goal. If you don't train them, they won't work. If you don't train them, they won't serve. I'm too busy. I'll pray about it. You ever get that response? Hey, you going to do this? I'll pray about it. Yeah, right. Ephesians 4:11, and he gave some as apostles, some as prophets, some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers for the equipping of the saints for the work of service to the building up of the body of Christ. Equipping, what's that mean? That means you train them. The number one complaint that I hear from pastors is the lack of workers in their church to help them as the pastor to do the work of ministry in the church. I went to, it's been 20 years ago, I went to a pastor seminar, and we were sitting around tables. They were fairly large tables because I think there was like 5 couples at each table. And the speaker gave us different things to talk about, discussion kinds of things. And one of the questions was, what is the number one problem in your church? I remember listening to that thinking, well, this ought to be fun. And as the first pastor and the next pastor and the next pastor, it was all the same. Everyone was the same. I don't have enough people to help me. Don't have enough people to help me. I can't get people to help. Can't get people involved. That was the number one problem. And so the answer to that question is people will not get involved. They will not help until they are trained. They might mow the lawn, but that's about it. You have as many workers in the church as you have trained. If you haven't trained people in your church, most of them will not get involved. And the training is you're motivating them to do the basic disciplines, read the Bible every day, spend time in prayer, so they've got the fire in them from those disciplines. The pyramid principle of church growth says that the size of the base determines the size of the mass. So if we put some sand on this chair, pour it on there comes a point where no more sand just runs off. Much as you put on it keeps running off. So you just increase the base and you can put more sand on it. This base are the trained leaders in your church. Increase the number of trained leaders and the mass increases automatically. And so I can do that. I can train people to in the church, and I can motivate them to read their Bible and to pray and to set goals and to manage their time and to think about a ministry they can start and get plugged in. And as I do that, then the church grows, automatic. The base is those individuals who are the committed servers in your church, who do the work of ministry in your church. You have as many workers in your church that you've trained. So the training will happen when you have a system, when you have a plan. It starts out slow. It seems too slow, but you faithfully work your plan and your system, and pretty soon it begins to increase exponentially. Number two, the number of people who are willing to give leadership to the various existing ministries in the church grows. So every ministry needs some kind of leadership. Youth group, Awana, adult, small groups, whatever the leadership is, it needs somebody to take leadership of that. Otherwise, I end up having to do it. As well as their ability to do so effectively and maintain unity in the ministry area. Our philosophy at JBC is to turn people loose. Let them do what they want without looking over their shoulder and attempting to control them. A number of years ago, when Mike was first starting, there was an adult came and he wanted to teach a class. The class was sort of out of the parameter of where we are, our church, theologically. And but he wanted to do this class on that, and so Mike was a bit nervous about it, that it would create some conflict, some disunity. And I said, I think what will happen is that he'll teach the class, and we'll put a little insert in it, and the first class there'll be quite a few people attend it. The second class, there will be a few that will. The third class, nobody will show up. And he was still a little bit nervous. So he took off. He did the class. This guy did the class. Sure enough, first class, I think there was 20 people showed up. Second class, there were 3 that showed up. Third class, nobody showed up. And so he came to me and he says, Pastor D, I think maybe I've discovered what I'm not gifted at. I said, check it off, try something else. It was good after that. this, if you, with us, our church, where we preach the word and what it is, everybody knows in the church where we are. And so when there's something that's a little bit out of where we normally are, somebody will go to the first time and say, this doesn't line up with where we are. And plus, he's not that good a teacher, and so they bail on it. Well, we don't have to worry about, yes, you can't, no, you can't, yes, you can't, no, you can't, no, that's not allowed. We just train people, pursue unity, and equip them, and things just sort of, they work. They work. Well-trained people have a strong desire to maintain the unity of the church family and to do an excellent job leading their ministry. So as a result of the class, because of the emphasis on unity that we have in the class, when they get through the class and start ministry, give leadership to various things, one of the things they're always thinking is about maintaining unity. So discussions that we have with them about that, if we get involved in anything that it's not difficult. Control freaks discourage people, cause them to not dream from having a growing vision for their ministry and setting goals for their ministry. So I have this book of leadership axioms that I've written over the years, just leadership, and they're mostly just sort of mottos that I have. One of them is, don't boss people around. I don't like it, they don't like it. Don't boss people around. Another one is, never say no. And so I've just got these various axioms that I operate by. Number 3, the number of leaders who are visionaries and entrepreneurs who see the needs in the church and can successfully start new ministries grows. We have a radio ministry, radio station in Albany broadcasts Mike's sermons every morning. And we probably, at this point, we've got probably half a dozen every weekend of first-time attenders come because of that radio program, radio ministry. Now, a number of years ago, there was a guy in our church, and he came to me, and he says, we need to start a radio ministry. And I remember thinking, we don't want to start a radio ministry. He said, I said, that's just the only people that listen to the Christian radio are Christians. He said, yeah, but there's a lot of Christians that listen to radio who don't go to church. I said, how do you know that? Well, I just read some books on radio ministry, Christian radio, and that's what they said. I said, they listen to radio, that's their church. And then when they listen to you, they will hear you say, you need to be in church. And so people come all the time to show up here because they've listened to the radio program. Now, I didn't start that program. I don't have anything to do with that program. I hardly have listened to that program. Whenever I listen to myself preach on the radio, I get ill. So, though I have to admit, I preach 40 minutes and the radio program is 22 minutes. It is a vast improvement. They cut out all the dumb jokes and all the bad stuff, and it's like, wow, the times I have listened to it, I think, I'm a pretty good preacher. Huh. But Jim Wise was the name of the guy, and he started it and got it going and got it rolling. I didn't have a thing to do with it. I have never had a thing to do with it. But it's been a great ministry in our church. But somebody else had the vision for it and was the entrepreneur type individual. He was killed here a number of years ago. If he was still alive, he would have had us on television. I was really nervous about that when he started talking about it. But somebody I talked to the other day, we have people who show up here on Saturday night. They have their own church. They want to stay to their church, but they want to see what I look like and Mike looks like because they listen all the time. And it's always a disappointment for them. There's one guy, he says, well, you don't look like what I imagined you look like. I said, so, and then he said this. He said, you have a face for radio. It took me a minute to kind of get that one. Again, over control and oversight of ministries will effectively kill the desire of the best champions in your church. My oldest daughter grew up in this church, and she got married, and her husband was a pastor of one of our daughter churches. But before they started, she got involved in a church where they lived a ways away, and she's very, very good in music. She teaches music. She taught music at East Lynn Community Christian School, but she's great. In the church she was in, she started a choir, and they didn't have one, and she's doing a choir, and she's also teaching music with kids, and then they're going to do a performance in the church, and she has asked her husband to build a little riser thing for people to stand on. And the pastor, she said, "Dad, I've had a strange experience." I said, "What's that?" "I got in trouble." "You did? By who?" "The pastor of the church we're in." "Why?" "Because I built a riser for my choir members to stand on without asking him and getting his permission." She said, is that the way it works at your church?" I said, "No. If you want to build a riser, you can build a riser. I don't care. If that's part of your ministry, do it." And and she was quite taken back by this thing that she got in trouble. I said, "Well, you just kind of do what you can, work what you can, and go as much and do whatever, get along, be unified." But I thought to myself afterwards, what kind of pastor is going to demand that people ask permission in order to build a riser for people to stand on? And I thought, I guess maybe there's quite a few out there like that. That control kind of stuff. You kill your church. You kill creativity. Nobody's going to do anything if somebody's telling them what they can't do. Philosophy of JBC is we never start a ministry on the basis of need. We always started on the basis of available, trained, passionate leadership. So when we turn people loose and don't demand that they do it our way, we'll have a lot of people stepping forward to do ministry. We quitting at 6:30? Okay. Ministry started on the basis of need usually requires pastoral oversight and continual recruiting of workers to run the ministry. Ministry started on the basis of available, trained, passionate leadership runs all by itself. All by itself. So the church in the New Testament is called the body of Christ, and the illustrations are body parts: eyes, ears, feet. And so in my body there are systems: circulatory system, the nervous system, and so these systems in a sense are within the body, and they connect and function. The systems are healthy, things work really well. And so the goal in church is to have systems that are self-regulating, as it were, and so you don't have to energize it, you don't have to control it, it just goes and does what it's supposed to do. And so we've got, a youth group, and there's a system that they have there with kids, high school kids, junior high kids, people who run it, volunteers that are involved in the whole thing, and I don't tell them what to do. I don't tell them how to do it. I don't tell them when to do it. They just do it. I will ask questions like, are you reading? Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you checking with other youth groups that are doing well, what they do? Or that's all I do, is to motivate the leadership, the vision, and to increase effectiveness. But I don't tell them what to do. They're the boss of their ministry, not me. It's so nice as a pastor to have ministries in the church that you don't have to babysit. It increases your fishing time. Number 4, these are the blessings of this leadership class training. The quality of the marriages in the church grows. So I do, in my leadership class, I train the men's class, I train them how to be leaders in their home. And so as they learn how to be leaders in their home, then their marriage is going to increase. It used to be a number of years ago, every time a guy got into leadership class, when he got out of leadership class, his wife got pregnant. It was a great way to church growth, biological church growth, go through leadership class. And so I had all these babies coming along. But good husbands are servants, not dictators. And so the leadership classes are teaching how to be a servant. We talk about character qualities of deference. What's it mean to practice deference as a character trait? And then we talk about the 7 basic needs of your wife. How can you meet those basic needs? I remember one of the guys that got up to give a sermon after he graduated, he shared what the 7 basic needs were. That's when I really got a lot of guys in leadership class, because every wife out there said, you're in leadership class next year. They wanted their husband to learn what those 7 basic needs were and how to meet them in their life. And so I teach about how to love your wife and how to love the church. And a number of years ago when I was made a goal, I hadn't told Patty I loved her for 20 years. The reason I didn't is because I never heard my dad say it to my mom or me. I didn't even know anybody said that kind of thing. And so I finally came to the point of saying, I need to do that. I made a goal, tell her 5 times every day I love her. A couple of times I forgot and got to the end of the day, we were getting ready for bed, and I love you. I love you. I love you. Patty said, you told me. I said, shut up, I'm not done yet. And so one day she says, what's that mean anyway? I love you. You've been saying it. She'd said it when I had a bowl in my hand, and on the side of the bowl it says, I love ice cream. And she wanted to know what the difference was. And I knew there was one, but I wasn't quite sure how to answer it just yet. So I said, give me a couple of days on that. And so I wrote out these I love you commitments. When I say I love you, this is what I mean. The first one was, every time I say I love you, I'm promising, I'm committing to you that you are the only woman in my life, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Every time I say I love you, I'm promising you that. I had an anger problem early on in our marriage, and I don't anymore because I made it a goal to get rid of it, and I can't remember the last time I got even a little irritated. I think it was at a golf ball. And so I said to Patty, every time I say I love you, I am making a commitment to you that I will not get angry at you. I will not even get a little bit irritated, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you do it. And the third one was the one that made her. The third one made her cry. I says, my wife's a talker. She talks a lot. She can't think without talking. I don't talk much. I can go all day long without talking, conversationally. And so this created this. She wanted to talk. And so I wasn't a very good listener. And I said this in my I love you statement. Every time I say I love you, I'm promising you, committing to you, that I will listen to you as long as you want, and I will honor you by paying sincere attention to your words. And I will never again do this. That meant land the plane. And I will never again do this. That meant just give me the bottom line. I said that, and she started crying. It was sort of like she died and gone to heaven. I don't think she thought I would really do it. But now, when she's talking, my eyes start to glaze over. She will say, I love you. Sort of jerking my chain, you know. And, oh, yeah, I love you too. What were you saying? Continue. So in the leadership class, we talk about that. What's that mean when you say to your wife, I love you? Does it mean anything, really? And so we start talking about commitment. Commitment. Commitment, that's key in your walk with God. Commitment's your key in the church. Your commitment's a key in your marriage and with your kids. Commitment is saying, I will. Specifically, what is exactly what you're going to do? I will. Do you know what I call guys in the church that say I will and don't? Flakes. Yep. Flakes are not worth much. Yeah, you nod your head and smile, nice to them, but you don't give them much responsibility because you don't know if they'll carry it through or not. A non-flake is somebody who says, I will and does it. Faithfully carries out what they say they will do. That's what faithfulness is, making commitments and keeping them. The unity and health of the marriages in a local church is a major factor in determining the unity and health that is in that church. The quality and the godliness of the next generation in any church is greatly impacted by the quality and godliness of the marriages that produce them. Can you go back to that previous? Okay, back up one there. PowerPoint person. Okay, the quality and godliness of the next generation. Oh, we got that one up there, right. Number 5, the unity and oneness in the church grows. That is a huge plus for the leadership class training. Unity and oneness in the church grows, both the absence of conflict and the proactive unity of people working together. When I was a kid, we had a neighbor up the road, and he had 12 hound dogs. And he still owned every car or pickup he had ever owned, but they were on cinder blocks. The tires were off, and they were sitting on cinder blocks. I mean, he had them all over. I guess he was saving them for something. And so his dogs were tied to the front of each of these trucks or cars on cinder blocks. That was their house underneath of the car. And so my dad and I would go up, and he would turn them loose, and they'd jump in the back of the pickup, and we'd go up this one particular road, and he'd turn them out, and they'd go chase a coon and tree the coon, and we'd go and shoot the coon, and I was always great for if I got to shoot the coon. And so one time I went up there, and his dogs are all tied up, barking when you walk up the road. And I said, Hank, how come you keep your dogs tied up all the time? He says, if they're running loose, they'll fight. They'll chew each other's ears off. It'll just be a mess. And so we go up there, and he opens the back of his pickup up, and he turns them all loose, and they all jump in the back of the pickup, and we take off. And I says, so they're not fighting now. Why do they fight at your house? He says, we're going hunting now. He says, they're hunting dogs. When they're hunting, they don't fight. But when they're just laying around doing nothing, then they fight. I thought, that's kind of like a church. See, we were designed by God to do ministry, to do something that makes a difference. When we just sit around and do nothing, then we fight. And so the more you get people plugged into ministry and doing something, the less they fight. The more they value unity, the more they pursue that unity. Major philosophy at JBC is that God doesn't bless methods, He blesses unity. You've heard me say that about 10 times. The unity of our church is that which greatly determines how effective we will be in attracting people to our church into faith in Jesus. Now, this is a super, super important principle. When I was in high school, I had a good friend. His name was Marion. And we formed a support group. guys who hated their mothers for the names they were given. When Marion and I graduated from high school, we went to the same college, and when we got there, they had us in the girls' dorm. That's a true story. But we were committed Christians, and so we told them of their mistake a couple of weeks later. One time I ran a marathon, and you get to the end of a marathon, you pay your $70 to get your electronic ticket, but when you get done running, you go up there and they give you a T-shirt and a medal, and usually a can of warm pop or some other kinds of thing like that. So I finished running the marathon. I go up to the table, and there's a lady sitting there, and I told her my name, and I'm going to get my T-shirt and my medal and my pop, and she's looking, and she says, "You're not on the list." I said, "Yeah, I am. I sent my money in. I got my ticket. I got to be on the list. I'm in my electronic timer." "Well, I can't find you." Because it happens periodically, I said, "Well, look over on the women's side." And she looked over, then she got this smirky look on her face, and she said, "Oh, yes, here you are. By the way, you won your class." 3 other ladies over 60, and I beat them all. So he started coming to our church up in Trout Lake, and we became good friends. And his mom came once. She was the English teacher in the high school. His dad was overseas doing some kind of a job. And his mom came to one time and didn't come back. And one time we were working on a project together, and I said to him, I says, "So your mom came to church, but she only came once. How come she didn't come back?" And he got real embarrassed. I could tell his face turned red. He said, "Well, she can't stand the smell." I said, "What?" See, everybody in our church, the church I grew up in, were all dairy farmers. Most everybody was. You go out and milk the cows and do all the chores, and you come in and you shower and do that and get ready for church. But just as we're driving out the driveway, Dad says, "Hey, Dee, it looks like the heifer gate might be open. Go check." Well, you don't get much on you, just a little. But everybody who comes to church has just a little on them. And so there's this aroma. We don't notice it. We work in it all day long. It smells like money to us. But to an outsider, it was repulsive. Now, disunity in a church creates an odor. And we get used to it in church, all these little skirmishes here, there, and everywhere, these turf wars going on there. That's just kind of church life. An outsider comes in, and they can smell that like cow manure, and it's repulsive. I mean, you take an unchurched person, they may not know Matthew from Revelation, but they know this. Church ought to be a place where there's unity, where people don't fight. And disunity in a church absolutely takes away all the power of the gospel. It makes it a place that it's not true. Doesn't work. So if you're going to have a church that attracts people, you've got to have a church that's got lots of unity, great unity. John 17:20, Jesus said, "I do not ask on behalf of these alone, but for those who believe in me through their word." That means he's praying for us today, "that they may all be one, even as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe." So it's our unity that is our power in evangelism. It's our unity that keeps people coming back, because there's a truth in our message based on our unity. Philippians 1:27, "Conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel, so that whether I come and see you or remain absent, I will hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel." Number 6, the number of people attending the church grows because those who have graduated from the leadership class are much more aggressive in greeting visitors, inviting friends, and witnessing. Okay, all the blanks are in the end there. Greeting visitors, inviting friends, and witnessing. So if I start a leadership class tomorrow and you all are in it, and I start saying, "Okay, this is what we're going to do, the assignments that I'm going to give, and you're going to give her, I'm going to piece of paper, it'll say, yes, you did, no, you didn't." One of them is greet 2 people every week that you don't know. So you walk up and say, "Hi, my name is," I don't know as we've met. and you carry on a conversation, and then you write their names down, and on the sheet that you turn in, you put their names down there. If you do, then I give you 100 points. Some guys will say, I forgot to write their names down. No points. Better remember next time if you want some points. So we've got 30 in leadership class this year. They're running all over the foyer before church. You see a lineup behind visitors. Yeah. A big problem in a lot of churches is that they're not very friendly. Visitors come, nobody says a word to them. I was reading a book recently that says that the average visitor makes up his mind whether he's coming back in the first 10 minutes. Well, they haven't had time to hear me preach. Matthew 4:19, he said to them, follow me, I will make you fishers of men. I will make it happen. So training in that area of evangelism becomes really important. Thanks, Ben. 7, the number of people committed to and participating in the prayer ministry of the church grows. Corporate, private, spouses praying together. I went to Phoenix a couple of years ago to speak at a prayer conference. There was about 6 different speakers there. And when I was talking to the person planning it before I got there, he says, what aspect of prayer would you like to speak on? I said, well, I can do anything you want. And he gave me some things that they were wanting. And one of them was how to increase the number of people in your church that actually attend the corporate prayer meetings you have. I said, I can do that one. And so when I talked, I said, things that work best for us is that we train people, and one of the aspects of training them is teaching about the power and the importance of corporate prayer. Churches that pray together, God blesses churches that pray together, will have more salvations. The church began with a corporate prayer meeting, 120 people praying together for 10 days. So the church praying together is really, really important. Every revival in the history of the church began with a big corporate prayer meeting. But it's hard to get people to go. I mean, you push and push and push. Well, in the leadership class, I teach about corporate prayer, how effective it is and how powerful it is and how God blesses and works in our church and how it'll change you, the individual that goes and prays together with other believers in the church. So we got this motto, much prayer, much blessing, little prayer, little blessing, no prayer, no blessing. So if you're in my leadership class and you get 500 points behind, and you're saying, I hate being last, anything I can do to get caught up? I said, yep. 5 days of prayer is coming up. Every hour you come and pray, I'll give you a bonus of 100 points. Oh, cool. So they come and pray a bunch and get caught up. Now somebody says, well, that doesn't seem like a good motivation. Well, it's not if it stayed there. But it doesn't stay there. That's just to kind of get them in. Now, once they come, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours during the 5 days of prayer, then they're hooked. Then they come back again, the next one, and again, and they become one of those committed prayers in the church. The hardest thing to get people in a church to do is to faithfully pray, especially in corporate prayer. When I do, if you came to the prayer conferences in the past, I've said it's easier to get people to give large sums of money than it is to get them to pray. But you just keep moving and pushing and encouraging and training and teaching so you get them coming. Number 8, the financial giving by those who go through the leadership class increases. It's one of the basic disciplines, so we talk about it. one of the harder things to talk about with people generally is their giving. That's a cool blessing from leadership class. Your giving goes up and up and up and up and up as you teach people. The discipline of giving is a major factor in the growth of Christians. My motive is not necessarily to increase the giving in the church. My motive is that they'll grow, and I know that as their giving goes up, their growth will go up. Very few will give sacrificially without solid teaching on why giving is a good thing. What does the Bible teach? Why should I give? So, teaching on that then increases the giving. Once a person becomes a committed giver, their commitment to the church almost always grows. Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there's where your heart is. So you get people to give more. Their commitment to the church, their love for the church, their involvement almost automatically goes up. Number 9, the number of people who are strong, faithful, and committed partners with the pastor grows. Second Timothy 4:16, at my first defense no one supported me, but all deserted me. May it not be counted against them. 2 Timothy 1:15, that's the wrong verse. I got to make sure I get that one corrected before the next time I teach it. 2 Timothy 1:15, you are aware of the fact that all who are in Asia turned away from me. Number 10, number of people who support, encourage, and pray for the pastor and staff grows. So when before Mike took over the preaching, weekend preaching, I preached 5 sermons every year at different points in the year. I came around, same sermon as last year, same sermon as the year before. 5 sermons I preached every year at particular points in the service. Now, most people didn't remember. If they remembered I preached one like that, they didn't remember the content, so it didn't hurt anything. And it's, 5 sermons out of 52 weeks, kind of nice to have it. One of them was the one after my birthday every year. And so I would, the Sunday after my birthday, I'd say, I don't know if you know this or not, but most of you didn't get me a present for my birthday. What's wrong with this church anyway? But I'm going to save you. I'm going to give you a chance to give me a present today. I know it's a couple of days late, but that's okay. Then I preached a sermon on how powerful it was to pray for me. I had 7 P's, including my preaching, my person, my character, my protection. Went down through all those 7 things. When you pray for me, I live more godly, and the devil doesn't have a chance to touch me. And my preaching goes up so much, and then you grow. So we have this symbiotic relationship. You pray for me, I preach, you grow, and so we both grow together. You do your part, I do my part. Praying for your pastor is so important if you want him to preach really good anointed sermons and for you to be touched and blessed and grow from it. So I preach that sermon every year, right after my birthday. And so at the end of the sermon, on your card, would you write down there that you're making a commitment to pray for me 15 minutes minimum a week? I mean, almost everybody. Sunday after my birthday. Next year, Sunday after my birthday, preach the same sermon. Last time I preached it for Mike. He was gone. I was preaching, and I said, you need to give him this gift. Pray for him. Commit to him. Write it on the card. He came back. They had him on the desk, all these cards that said, we're praying for you 15 minutes a week. Some said 30 minutes a week. Some said 15 minutes a day. Some said, there was all kinds of commitments to pray that God would bless and work in and protect from the evil one and anoint, so that preaching was awesome. it's a great relationship when you get people to do that. Number 11, the number of people who faithfully practice the basic disciplines of the Christian life grows. As a result, the number of spiritually mature believers in the congregation grows. And so when we talk about discipleship, that's kind of what we think of, but what I teach in leadership is way more than that particular thing, though. But getting everybody to read their Bibles every day, spend time with God in prayer, pray with their wives, read good Christian books, those basic disciplines grow and they never stop. Number 12, the number of people who are setting personal goals increases, and those who cooperate with the goals that the pastor sets for the church grows as well. So if I were to talk about leadership skills that I have, that you have, and we say, what's leadership? What's a good thing that leadership do? One of the things that would pop up, because it's written everywhere, leaders cast vision. There's no vision, the people perish. I remember back years ago when I was kind of getting started, I read this thing about, I got to be a vision caster. And so I went to a seminar. And I came out of that thing so frustrated because it was all about having vision for the church as a leader. And I thought, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is smoke marijuana. Man, that whole vision thing just I couldn't figure it out. It made no sense. And so I began thinking about it and writing about it and studying about it and reading the Bible about it. And I came to the conclusion, vision is pretty simple. It's just common direction that I would set. And a vision is a goal. Let's do this tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Let's make this our pursuit together. That's the vision. That's pretty simple. And so this last year we had a vision for a number of people getting baptized. We have visions for special offerings that come in and what building projects we're going to do and what we're going to do in missions and goals. So we got quite good at it. And so I remember Larry McCracken, the general director, says, you need to go teach other pastors, go to the churches and do the seminar on goal setting. I went about 4 times, and I quit because it was absolutely the most frustrating thing. I got so much pushback, so much resistance. And even after I'd been there, I'd call 6 months later and say, so what's going on with goal setting in your church? Nothing. And so there's a sequence that has to happen. Somebody called me about goal setting. Pastor needs to set goals personally. He needs to become good, skilled at setting goals for himself. And he needs to teach a couple of people, just a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people how to do it and get them. And then he can move to teaching the church about it. But you jump in and try to teach the church how to be goal-oriented as a church when you're not, or there's not some that have been trained to do it, it's just get nothing but pushback. And I could predict when I'd go do it to be a church like this, but audience I'm going to teach, I could say, okay, that person right there is going to ask question 1, this person's going to ask question 2, that person is going to ask question 3. First question was always the same. Isn't goal setting secular? Didn't Lee Iacocca invent that? What are we doing it in the church for? Always the first question. And I could spot it. Always a 70-year-old lady. Second question, isn't goal setting, doesn't it quench the Spirit and leading on the Holy Spirit? And then the third question, So I teach leadership class, and in the leadership class, I teach everybody the importance of setting goals, and they set goals, and they get excited about it. Pretty soon you do a leadership class, and you do another leadership class, and you do another leadership class, and everybody are goal setters. So we set a goal as a church. That's what we do. Everybody buys in, and they all work together for the goal. They all pray together for that goal. They strive together. And you got unity, not only the absence of conflict, but also the presence of proactive cooperation for a common goal, vision. That's a powerful church when you got people praying for the same thing, working towards the same thing because they believe in the power of goals. Well, it only happens when you train people to do it. Yeah, we're done, and it's good. It's 6:30. It's time for me to quit. I can see Ms. Krause back there with her pellet gun. Okay, I'm going to pray. Oops, about had a crash there. I'm going to pray for our meal. So we're not going to do it in the gym because we don't have a microphone. If you want to have somebody at the table, you can, but I'm going to do it now so we're officially prayed for as far as the dinner goes, okay? And so if those that want to be, let's pray. Lord, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for our individual churches that are here. Bless each one. Cause us to be unified and growing. I pray for each leader here that they would indeed be good leaders, that you would use them in their churches. And I pray now as we sit at the tables together that we'll have great conversations, and those who are hosting will answer questions that come up, and there will be just a really, really fun evening of eating together. So at your table, you should have a host, a couple, most of them, sometimes some of the tables may have two, and they are all graduates of leadership class, so ask away on the questions and just find out from them up close some of the things that you may be thinking about the class.